Hello folks, so right now we're going to do the last practicum, practicum number 5, which is where we're going to make a series of serial dilutions and then test them on the UV-vis spectrometer. So right here is our UV-vis spectrometer. As we'll see, it is currently turned off. We have our chamber. We got our dial that's going to measure the wavelength. We got various little buttons and knobs, and we got the on and off switch in the back. So the first step here is to flip this on. Just give it a chance to warm up. It's not going to do anything right now. It's going to read 3.0, and that's fine. Note, I've already set the wavelength at 630 nanometers. We can leave it for the duration of this lab. The next step is to plan out my serial dilutions. M1 V1 equals M2 V2. If I have 5 molar and I want to make 3 dilutions. One of the key things here is we're going to 25 mil volume. We want these guys we want them far enough apart, but in a regular type pattern. So, plan out how much you want to use. Just make sure you have enough in this sample in the chamber. So, because we're going to burette out our volumes. That's already going to be pre-prepared. So, don't worry so much about there. You can use whatever volumes you want. I'm going to do something a little regular. So I'm going to do 7 mils, 14 mils, and 21 mils. You don't have to do that, but either way, you choose your volumes. I'm going to put this down. The next step is for me to kind of prepare my flasks. Preparing my flasks, remember I'm going to just rinse these guys with a small amount of deionized water. They don't need to be perfectly dry because I'm going to be filling these in with our blue solution and then diluting to 25. Now, your actual volumes are not as crucial as trying to get where you're going at. So I said I wanted 7 mils. I need to read my first volume. So I need to read what's my initial volume and go from there. So it's not quite 4, it is actually closer to 3, I'll say 3.90. So that's my initial volume. I'm going to write that down, 3.90. So to get to 7 mils, it's about 4. I need to get to about 12. Well, let's see. I need to get to about 11. So onto flask 1. Pour that in. It's all set up, and I need to get to about 11. So I'm going to carefully drain this until I get to close to 11. A little bit more, a little bit less will not hurt one way or another. We can calculate that. At eye level, is actually reading 11 point maybe 1. So I'm going to put that in 11.11. So how much did I dispense? I dispensed 7.21. Now, the brilliance of this is I can start 11.11 as my next volume. So into flask number 2. Flask number 2. To get 14 mils into here, or thereabouts, 14 mils onto 11 is about 25. So I'm going to try to get down to about 25. Oh, better slow down. So I got technically to 24.90. I'm going to say 24.90. So 24.90. This would be 13.79 mils delivered. And so going from 24.90, another 21 mils from about 25 would get me to 46 or thereabouts. 46. So I need to drain the remainder of this just about till we get to about 46. And as long as we're close, that's the important part. Let's see, how much did we actually get? So there's 46 and some change. It looks like 46.49. 46.49. So 46.49. So we got a little bit over 21, so it'd be 21.59. Okay. Now, we can do a quick calculation, or we can do this later. Quick calculation of our molarities. So, molarity. Well, M1V1. So, our dilution is going to be 5 molar times my 7.21 divided by 25. So my molarity for the first one is going to be 1.442. My second one, 5 times 13.79 divided by 25 is going to be 2.758. And then 5 times 21.59 divided by 25, 4.318. So there's my 3 molarities. The next step is to do my dilutions. We're going to add the ionized water and dilute them to the 25, wrapping them with the parafilm and inverting them several times. So step 1, I'm just going to grab these guys and add the ionized water up to the line. Up to the line. If you did these guys far enough apart in volumes, you should be able to, when all said and done, see a difference in color. That guy's ready for parafilming and inverting. I'm going to do all that at once before I parafilm and invert them all. So right now I'm just prepping my samples before I even get to the using the UV-vis. It won't take much volume for my last one because I used okay. So everything's parafilm these guys and invert them like we showed last time. I fold it in half, twist it over, and this guy might have to shake it a bit to get it to invert, but there's one done. Fold this in half, stretch it over. Oh, crap. That one's not going to be so good. I'll just grab a new one. different way. And then wrap around. Now I need one more because fold in half, stretch over, and then wrap around several times. Okay. You should be able to see 3 different depths of color. 3 different depths of color. Depending on how dilute they are. Okay, now it comes to calibrating this. Right now it has no reading. It's not going to be of any use to us. No matter what we do, it's not going to do anything until we set a 0 and 100%. This works by measuring the light that is passing through this little slot down here, through whatever's in here and going to the detector, passing through there, going through whatever's in that slot and go to the detector. We need to set an artificial 0 light gets through and an artificial 100% light gets through in order for this to be calibrated. So the first step is, with that big black block blocking all the light, this is set up so it's blocking there, and this closed, we are pressing the 0% T to tell it 0% light is getting through. Still not ready, so I'm gonna slide that up. Slide it up again so that now light's passing through this empty one. However, we do not want this empty. We want to put a cuvette in there. The cuvette absorbs a little bit of light. The water absorbs a little bit of light. So we want to have this measuring just water and the cuvette. So we're going to fill this up with deionized water. Now there may be 4 cuvettes in there. We are only going to use 1. Please note, 1 cuvette. We are not using 4 cuvettes. 1 cuvette for the whole experiment. So the first step is to fill this up with deionized water. We want to make sure there's no air bubbles, no scratches, no smudges. So as we touch this, I'm going to always try to hold it by the opaque side. Never trying to hold it by the clear side. Always the opaque side. You see there's a little bubble in there? I'm going to tap this on the surface or even flick it to get that bubble out. Then I'm going to take this chem wipe and wipe this surface of this so that it's as smooth and clear as possible. With that in mind, putting this in, clear side facing there. So clear side so the light's passing through there, and I'm hitting 100% T. Now we are good. You don't need to change the mode. We don't need to hit any of these buttons ever again. The only time we need to hit the button is if we're moving the wavelength or something has goofed up. But for now, we are done. Notice it reads 0. As I let this up, it reads negative. Because if we said 100% of the light was getting through, 0 light was absorbed, and now this is open, we're getting extra light in there. So it's getting more than 100%. I take that out and we're getting much more than 100%. So, which is why that reads negative. So I'm going to dump this into the waste. And now I'm going to fill this up with my sample. just like we did with everything else, we are going to rinse first and then fill it up properly. Because these guys are hard to pour, I'm going to get beaker. Just with that in mind, move that aside, I'm going to pour the first one, the lowest concentration, into the beaker first. Idea, the lowest concentration, you always want to start low and go to high because, among other things, if you have any trace sample in there, when we rinse, the lower concentration will be have less of effect than higher concentration. So I don't need to fill this all the way up. I'm gonna just rinse that out. If you have extra, you can rinse it out again if you want, but you only really need to do that once, and then we'll fill that up. I'm gonna make sure to wipe off any moisture on the side. We do not want the cuvette wet. Tap any bubbles. Want any smudges gone. We don't want anything other than just a clean, dry cuvette. I'm gonna put this in here. We don't have to hit any buttons. We just have to push that in and close, and then we can read our value. My first value in this case is 0.254. So I'm going to write that down. My absorbance is 0.254 for that molarity. There are no units, so we do not have to worry about the units. If we were going to graph this, we would just graph absorbance on the y-axis and concentration on the x-axis. So I'm just pulling that out, this out, and I'm dumping that into the waste. Now, flask number 2. As I said, going in order of strength, of molarity, increasing molarity each time. Notice it doesn't pour all at once and then suddenly, whoop. If we do that, try to do that with our flask, with our cuvette here, we're going to risk spilling. So, rinsing this with my sample 2. We'll be rinsing it a little bit more with sample 2. And I can fill it all the way up. It needs to be at least 2/3 of the way full. Notice there's a little moisture on here. Gotta wipe that off. Any moisture is extra liquid that it's not calibrated to deal with. So I'm wiping that off always between trials. Push that in. Down. My absorbance has gone up to 0.485. I'm going to write that down. Take it out again. Dump that into the waste. Down 0.485. Note, my molarity is more or less doubled. My absorbance has more or less doubled. I gotta do it one more time. One more sample. My molarity is once again, has now trebled from my first sample. So my absorbance should be somewhere along the lines of 0.75 if I've done this right. So I'm rinsing this. Rinsing it again. That's the advantage of using a 25 ml flask instead of a 10 ml flask. These guys hold like a few mils. So if you use a 10 ml, you can maybe only rinse a little bit. It's a lot more dangerous to over rinse. So, lifting that up, putting that in the same cuvette in the same place, same facing each time. And what do you know? My absorbance reads 0.750. 750. Now, if you have waited to measure your molarity, you would do this at this time after you've rinsed everything out. I'm going to turn off the instrument in the back, flip that down, rinse everything except for the burette put everything into the waste, rinse everything out, dispose of any used things, rinse the cuvette and put that back in the cuvette. That will be this last practicum.